Hi, I have decided to actually record this video just to give you some points, advice in relation to interpreting, working as a coach interpreter. However, before I will do that, I will just introduce myself because I think that's the appropriate way to do so. As I pointed out, my name is Alexandra Taylor. I have 8 years experience. I've been working as interpreter for 8 years. However, I have only 5 years experience working as a coach interpreter. In terms of my qualifications, I have several certificates. I've got a certificate in English. I have other certificates that not relating to interpreting and translation, which I will actually point out because I think it's relevant to have such a knowledge when it comes to interpreting. So I have CIFA, which is Certificate in Financial for Financial Advisors. I've got also a law degree. I studied law for 5 years. I have a bachelor degree upper second in law, so I studied different modules like criminal law, civil law, like tort law, and on top of that I have passed the exams for public service interpreters at level 4. And I have also recently passed as well level 6 DPSI exams for public service interpreters, law subject, and yeah, I think that would be all in terms of my qualifications. So as I have pointed out, I have 5 years experience as a coach interpreter and 8 years overall experience as an interpreter. I have also worked as a paralegal for a law firm, and I also work as a self-employed paralegal, doing some legal research as well, not advising. So in terms of the interpreting issues, firstly in this video I would like to point out a couple of books I think that are relevant and really helpful, because the books I will point out in a minute help me to actually understand the relevant law better and also prepare myself before going to an assignment. So first book I will actually state, it's not this one, it's I think I will point out this one. It's Blackstone's Magistrates Code Handbook. It's 2010 book. It's nice to have a current one, but it's quite expensive one. I will show you the book, the cover, and there you are. And yeah, it's good to have a current one. I would like to buy soon, so perhaps I will do so, but not at the moment. I can't afford, because I can find nevertheless some legislations and other helpful things, topics online. But nevertheless, in terms of that book, it's very helpful, and yeah, I before I go, when I go to court, magistrates are, of course, sometimes good for Crown Court as well. For Crown Court assignments is good as well, but mainly I use when I go to magistrates court. So as interpreter, I ask beforehand my client, which is the court usher, or a solicitor, or a non-English speaker, about some details in terms of the case before going in, or before having a discussion with a solicitor and the non-English speaker. So I like to actually ask beforehand, and when I know what kind of issue it relates to that case that will be heard in a magistrate court. For instance, let's take, I do have road traffic offences quite a lot, and public order offences as well. So let's take on page 189, public order, 189, public order, affray. We'll take affray. Let's have a look. There you go, we have here. And to be honest with you, I would like to say why this book is really crucial, relevant, unreplaceable. Firstly, because the thing is that magistrates, they do use guidance and they use the same law, and they do refer, not in all magistrates, to sections that are pointed out, for example, in this part. So for example, it's quite often that a legal advisor would read Public Order Act 1986 under section 3.1, 2 or 4. You are guilty of an affray as per act, which states that under section 1 a person is guilty of affray if he uses or threatens unlawful violence towards another, and his conduct is such as would cause a person reasonable firmness present at the scene to fear for his personal safety. Section 2, where 2 or more persons use or threaten that the unlawful violence, it is the conduct of them taken together that must be considered for the purpose of subsection 1. No person of reasonable firmness need actually be or likely to be present at the scene. So they will sometimes read like a section and they will state that. So an interpreter, of course, has to interpret everything that is said. For that reason, it's good to actually read beforehand, so you are familiar with the wording that will be used. However, as I pointed out in some magistrate courts, that they don't say those sections like this one. They will just state something: you are guilty of affray under section 3.1 Public Order Act 1986 because on this and that day you did this and that. So, but yeah, in most magistrates, I had this case where I just had to be familiar with this section, so it's good to read beforehand. Another thing to point out is that this book is really good because you don't have to actually read the section to learn it, but it's just good to actually read what kind of sentence the client is likely to get, and the wording is here that is likely to be used. so you can read, and just if you are not familiar, you don't know as interpreters some words, which is quite common, because I don't believe that every single interpreter knows every word. So it's good to actually read, just write down in a book or something, just remember the words. Yeah, and just read through. There are some cases as well mentioned as well, so you can go and research the case and read some additional words as well. But if you are in court, of course you can like read further, so some cases and what happened and how the law applies in this situation. So probably some words will be used as well, so it's kind of helpful. So this book, it's very helpful, as I pointed out, and it's good to actually have the recent version, because there might have been some kind of changes, new legislations, so for that reason would be good. I would like to actually, as a person who did law, and I'm actually planning to become a solicitor, would like to actually know the current law rather than old one. So yeah, the second book, I think, oh yes, it's here, which is very helpful as well, and old one again, is the Police Operational Handbook 2013. I've got here. You can get 2016, 17 even now, but even now, 2013, and also you can get that book. 2017 is quite expensive, I think, because I looked and I wanted to buy, but I couldn't afford. Yeah, so yeah, it's quite easy language, which is very helpful as well. Some additional words which I wasn't aware of as well, so I found, so I translated as well. And it's good to have either book, but I prefer, of course, the magistrate's book, but this one I do take sometimes as well. So we can have, like, for example, assaults and violence heading, but we'll go for assaults, common assaults, actual bodily harm, page 26, which is quite common to actually, those type of cases I do have. So you've got here, of course, act mentioned as well. I will show you. Here you've got section as well, and you've got the act mentioned, and you have some explanation as well. And it's good to know what kind of penalty or punishment a person might get, is likely to get as well. At the end of the section will be stated. So it's good to know, just to read beforehand, before you go and have your assignment. Just quickly read that, because it's short, it has only 3 pages. If you've got that case and you might find a word that you don't understand, you are not familiar with, so beforehand you can read and just underline, translate, done, and you are safe, I think. That helped me a lot. So yeah, I usually go and read a common assault under section 39, so you already know that section 9 is highly likely to be mentioned. It will be mentioned, of the Criminal Justice Act 1988, so you are becoming familiar with the act as well, so you will remember, or you can try to remember, because it will be mentioned as well. Is in fact 2 separate matters, an assault and battery. This area of law is dealt with first before covering the more serious assault, occasionally actual bodily harm, under the Offences Against the Person Act 8061. Defence which might be available to assault are then discussed. So underneath a common assault, battery offences, common assault and battery shall be summary offences. Criminal Justice Act 1988, section 39 mentioned here. And you've got wording points to prove that prosecution has to prove actually assault unlawful, must be you must be assaulted, and there must be another person in battery, what has to be proved, all points above. Application of unlawful force, example by beating. So you've got those wordings here mentioned, pointed out, and everything beforehand. You will go and just interpret. So this book is really good if you do lots of magistrates cases. So yeah, I think for now that's all I would like to actually point out. The two books which are quite relevant and helpful. And another thing which I will point out, and I used when I was in university studying law, I used to read the CPS website, Crown Prosecution website, and I found, like, I typed common assault or manslaughter, and I went on that website, and CPS on Google, of course, and I found everything that I needed, all the sections, some additional cases as well, and I'm still actually doing so when I work as an interpreter at the moment. I just, when I want to find out some additional words, and especially cases which are relevant, and I will say why as well in a minute, then I just go on that website, type Google, just manslaughter CPS website guidelines, then I go on CPS website, I read everything. Sometimes you have to read quite a lot, but you do tend to find actually words that some new words as well, which is helpful as well. So before going and before you have an assignment, it's good to actually read and familiarize yourself with sections and acts. And in terms of cases as well, why the cases are relevant, that can be found on that website, mainly because as a law student I learned that you can type a case, of course, and let's say R, which is the Crown, R versus for example Mackenzie. You can sometimes find cases online and get the judgment, and you can read, find new words as well again, and just find new words, and just to be prepared beforehand before you go to an assignment. Yeah, and however, it's not the thing you should be actually doing whilst you are in court and awaiting for the client to come or call you out to start interpreting, because it's waste of time. Of course, those judgments and CPS website is quite long. The content is quite extensive, so you don't have time. So I would say that you should refrain from doing that. Just read the two books I referred to, which is the Magistrate's book and the Police Operational Handbook. So you can just recall some words, and if you want to read further, then do so in terms of the CPS website. Yeah, and yeah, of course, another website which I would actually point out is the Supreme Court website, where you can find also judgments, so you can read some additional things in terms of different issues, so about immigration or any other issue. Just read the judgments. You can learn new words. If you've got immigration case the next day, then just go on that website. You can just download judgment or judgments in relation to immigration from the Supreme Court website, and just prepare yourself as well. When you go on that assignment, you can use the magistrate's book or the police operational handbook as well, if you need to actually recall some words, and just you need to quickly make sure that you know everything about this area. So I think that's all for now in terms of books and the websites I use. My next video will be in relation to how to interpret and what technique to use, and also if you have some additional questions, please do ask me. Just write underneath, and I will be able to answer you, I hope, and give you some guidance if you are an interpreter. And yes, and I can create another video if you wish, if you have some concerns, or you are someone who just started interpreting and would like to some advice, how to interpret, what should I do in this and that situation. So you are more than likely to comment on my video and just point out what would you like me to discuss next time. Thank you.